So welcome to our little live painting session today. Going big. Decided I have no idea why I do this to myself, but I actually went going 24-36 today. So a pretty good size, got a figure in it. Decided I would use some of my old illustration training and take a photo that isn't quite working and make it work as far as reference goes. So a lot of times I will look, whether I'm on location, whether I'm setting a model up, whether I'm working from a photograph, I look for the potential of the piece, not always what the piece is, but what it could be with some adjustments. And with that in mind, this is a really, the main problem with this piece is value. You can say maybe a little color, but primarily value. All the values are very close together, and therefore the figure almost gets lost. Now that's kind of nice in some respects, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this figure out more. And I did I took a charcoal pencil like this and did a quick sketch, threw a little spray fix on it. And you see there's about 4,000 lines up here. And I had a teacher once that said, one of those lines are probably correct. So, which is true. But all this is placement. It's really just placement. So with that in mind, we're going to start with the background. And I'm going to be really loose and kind of sloppy with it, more so than I usually am. And I usually am pretty sloppy. And I'm going to go a little lighter than it may appear. And the reason for that is so the figure stands out a little more. So the first thing we're going to do is going to take this area up in here. It's kind of a bluish brown. I'm going to lean everything a little blue in the background. So that's too blue. All I do is add a little earth tone to it. Any one of my browns will work. And we're just going to kind of get it in here like this, kind of loose and sloppy, and because it's behind things. It is not out in front, it's behind. And that's kind of important to know, that you're painting what's behind first and eventually leading up to what's on top. So, or as I've often said, paint from there to here. There is the background, here is the foreground. So there we go, just kind of a nice thin, we're gonna keep the idea of thin to thick today too, because of the scale. And so I'm going to start a lot thinner. And what that kind of means is a little bit more terp thrown into it, or medium. And I'm using a little bit of both, terp and medium. A little too much earth tone. That's better. So just go over it. That's better. I kind of like that. It was a little thinner than I wanted. Now, where else do I see? I see that kind of come in alongside. So let's not isolate these colors right now. I know a lot of times people get a knife, a very hard, crisp drawing down, and then they want to isolate. This color is a little bit more blue, so I mix up a whole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the colors together a little bit. And I've got a number 12 rosemary flat here, just in case you guys are wondering what the heck I'm using. Rosemary flat, little bit of the light blue, the burnt umber, and just a touch of white. The white kind of helps gray it down a little bit. And we'll kind of keep going. See, if I don't cover enough, it means I have to deal with that later. Now, the largest figurative piece I've ever done on location was 20 by 30, and in the same area, by the way. This is up in the Los Angeles area called, or above Los Angeles, in San Gabriel Mountains, near Mount Baldy, a place called Ice House Canyon. Wonderful, exciting, really neat area. And the model, this is from a very, very old photograph, probably oh, I don't know, 35 years ago. And I did not have negatives for it. So I actually took the little 4x6 photograph down and had it blown up. So that's kind of what I'm working from. So it's not the greatest photograph, but I'm doing a lot of interpretation anyway. I'm going to put some medium into that along with the terp is not carrying it far enough all by itself. So just by adding a little bit of the safflower oil, and I actually did something with the safflower oil today. I added a little bit, I had a little bit of this Robert Graham Alkyd medium. It's a walnut. And I added a little bit of that today just because I wanted to see what it did. Sometimes you do that. Sometimes you just, you test. Now I put a little bit of spray fix on the charcoal drawing, and I'll do that occasionally if I draw in charcoal or graphite or something like that. I'm drawing in a brush. I never worry about it. But because of the figure and the scale, I thought I ought to get some more definitive marks down. Now I'll augment these colors, providing I have the time. And what do I mean by that? Change them. Make them a little darker, lighter, bluer. Just get a little more color movement in them. Although this is a big area, and this I can actually take and do it right now. It's cool. It has almost a gray violet characteristic. So here's what I'm doing. I'm mixing a little bit of blue, meaning ultramarine, and I'm mixing a little bit of, I have some burnt sienna today, a little burnt sienna into it, a little bit more. And I don't want it to be a neat one, kind of a one color fits all. So I really do want the colors to be somewhat varied. So if I don't mix up enough of it, for example, this time I added just a little bit more blue to the same color. Now I'm going to add a little bit more sienna to it. And what's happening is I'm getting a little bit of the color characteristics of the rock, meaning the rock is not one exact color. Rocks never are. But I added a new color to my palette today, which I haven't used for a long time. I just happened to run across it while I was laying on my palette. I just throw it in here. It's called Mars Violet Deep by Winsor Newton. And I discovered that years ago when I was doing portraits, and then I started using it in some landscapes, and it really worked pretty well. So from time to time, I'll throw that in my palette. I found this wonderful brand new tube I had that I bought a while ago, and I stashed away and haven't used it, and went, wow, this is a good time, because I am doing a landscape and there's a figure in there. So when you squeeze it out of the tube, it looks very similar to burnt sienna, very, very similar. But when you tint it, it goes real dead. Okay, now I see a lot more blue in this rock right in front of it. So I added light blue to that same color. So we're getting kind of some of the variations in these rocks. One of the things I noticed after I did my drawing, she seemed a little bit short. And the model, let me give the credit to this fantastic model that we had back there. Her name is Rainbow, and she's a Native American, and was really kind with me and let me do a lot of drawings. And I don't know that I ever did a real finished painting of her. And this probably won't be a real finished painting either, but it'll be closer than anything I've done. I've done a lot of studies from her, life studies, where she posed in class, but I haven't done a lot of what one might think of as a more finished type painting. Okay, let's keep going. Got a big blue rock here. A lot of blue in it. A little bit more light. Let's try it. A lot more, some more medium. It's quite large, so I want to get as much of this tonality as I possibly can into this piece before I really start manipulating. And I don't want to spend a lot of time getting all that in. So I may actually switch over to another brush in a little bit, because a 12 actually might be a little small for what I'm doing at the pace. Not, if I were working all day on it, I wouldn't say that, but because I'm working pretty quickly. A little darker as we come forward, a little bit more sienna into it. Put too much sienna into it. Still has a bluish cast, so I don't want to lose that part of it. Okay, some little rocks down here. Yeah, this brush is taking too long to lay stuff in. Lighter blue, right here, right? Threw a little sienna into it because it was burnt sienna, just because it was going a little too bright of a blue, but it's a light blue right about here. When you hear me rubbing like that, I don't like that. So I added more medium, and you can see that it's going on. By medium, I mean the safflower oil, because I felt like I was having to scrub too hard. You know what? When you're doing this on location, and you find you're not quite sure what you're doing, just go crazy. Put too much in. Put too much in. You're going to correct as you go along. Just keep that in mind. And a bunch of little rocks here. Little smacks. A little darker. We're coming forward. As we come forward, we go a little darker and a little warmer. Keep that in mind. It's, if you think about it, you go back to anybody that had training in art school, and they say, you took a color class, and they say, warms come forward and cools recede. It's true. And then on top of that, if you start thinking value and you have a light painting, darker values are going to come forward. Light values, or I shouldn't say light values, less contrast is really what I mean, will recede. So the stronger contrast will come forward. And that's kind of what I'm doing here, hitting some.
So Chuck would like to know if it's going to be goopy.
If it's going to be goopy? Mm-hmm. No. And you want to know why?
Why?
I'll tell you why. Time. I'll get some of it in there. It's thin to thick. We're going thin to thick today. So this is thin, and then we'll get thick. But I'll only go as thick as I have time to go, because that tends to add a little bit more time to it. Let's add some of the warms up in there. I'm going to go to the raw sienna. Kind of mix that with the blue, maybe a little Naples yellow light. Oh, that's not bad. A little medium into that paint. this is fun because, you know, for someone who's not who's a realist, it's fun to kind of cut loose and be almost abstract and paint feeling as opposed to form. And that's really what I'm doing. You paint for the feeling, bring the form in at the end where you want it. So you begin to amplify that form, strengthen it. So we'll go down here. By the way, I like the term goopy. I like it better than gooey. I use gooey all the time. Okay, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Talking to myself again, but what the heck, I need to. Just looking to see, where else do I see these little warm touches? Where else? And that's what I'm playing with right now. If I see them, let's get them in there. If I don't see them, ignore it. Nice, beautiful little, wonderful color right off her cheek. And I'm going to use it. I like it. Off her shoulder a little bit, right? And because I'm working large, I need to stand back more. Okay, let's get some of the lights on these rocks here. Let's start with this. I'm going to go into the shadow, I think, a little bit first. I'm going to go back to that. Whoa. You heard me go, whoa? It's because I went a little too... I went with the Mars Violet, and it went a little more than I was expecting. So, but what I want to do is get a little bit of a dark, not that dark. So what do? Mix a little white to it. What's the opposite of, how do you lighten something that's too dark? Add white. White doesn't chalk up your colors all the time. You need, white is a necessity. It only chalks your colors up when you use it everywhere. Keep that in mind, because a lot of people are afraid. I see that in students a lot, where they're afraid to use white. So we got a little bit of what I call shadow detail, shadow information. It's definitely not detail, but it's variation. So yeah, it's not bad. If I do say so myself, it's so, I'll compliment myself when it's working, and I'll yell at myself when it's not. And what I find is I do a lot more yelling than I do complimenting. Okay, let's get the light side of that rock. Now, what color are we going to make that? Talking to myself again, all right. I'm going to take white and Naples yellow together. And I think I'm going to start right there with those two colors, kind of like that. Maybe a little darker. Now, this color is kind of a sandy color, for lack of a better description. And so, but I don't only want, I want to really hit the super light up top. So I'm kind of mixing other colors in as we go, so I don't have to do it later. Come down here, bring a little bit of that rock back there. Use the dirty color. There's going to be times when you want that color not to be that perfectly flat, neat color up in here, because I see movement of the rock, and it's structural movement. It may be movement of color and value due to minerals, but I see it more as structural. So we're gonna hit here, down, up, over. it's kind of sloppy, but I kind of like the sloppiness of it. I don't want to be, if you know, you can always go back if you have the time, truthfully, and I know I've mentioned this over and over and over again, you can always go back and neaten things up. You can go back and make things sloppier too, simply by just taking a big old brush and smearing it. But my whole premise in painting is start really more abstracted, finish more refined. And then the degree of refinement depends upon the degree of finish you're after. Oh, that's way too yellow. I wanted a little bit of yellow, but nothing like that. So that's better. Just push it right back into the rocks. Make different kinds of strokes. That I'm trying to kind of give you guys information as I do it, and I'm thinking out loud so that I can kind of explain things. So I want different stroke characteristics. I don't want all my strokes to feel exactly the same. That creates to me a boring painting. So I think it's really beneficial when you can make some long strokes, quick strokes, hard strokes, firm strokes, soft strokes. And there's times when you're going to want to make precise strokes. And then other times when you're going to just want to make kind of strokes that kind of just are real free, like that stroke. Free, but precise. By precise, I mean it did what I wanted it to do. So again, Naples and white. That's basically the color I'm using pretty much for the rock. And every now and then I'm mixing in a little something else. And when I say something else, the reason I'm saying something else is I can't definitively tell you exactly what color. I'm picking colors off the palette that I've used in other areas. To me, this is way too harsh now. So what I need to do is get that little bit of a pull back. That kind of helps. And by the time I'm done, if I don't refine other things too much, that will look relatively refined. I pick up I see little hints of warm. So what I did is in the same color, I picked up just a little bit of the raw sienna. And maybe a hint of blue, because I do see a divot and right in there. All right, I've got a little bit of this going but I need a little bit more activity, a little bit of the shadow kind of activity. So I've got all this kind of mucky blue, violet gray color already kind of mixed. So I'm just going to kind of introduce that back in there. Okay. That's okay. I'm not crazy about this right in here. Got a little bit of light sneaking. I kind of like that little piece of light that happens right about here. So let's hold it. Let's get this color there. I just took raw sienna into the same color I was using. And I see it kind of start and get a little dirty as it goes back. But light, dirty but light. And I think what that is rocks back in here that the water has hit. And it's probably getting a little bit of a stream of this water coming down through.
Question here. Lindy was asking fat over lean. She's saved safflower oil for later in the painting and Gamsol earlier. I see that you used safflower oil earlier. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not using, number one, I'm not using it thick. And I've got terp and some alkyd mixed into it. It's not just pure safflower. So generally I do the same thing. But if you need like a solvent-free gel works, I've got this alkyd color. I just yesterday purchased, I haven't laid it out yet in a jar or anything, but I just purchased the solvent-free gel in liquid form. Solvent-free. So I'm looking forward to using that because that sets up faster. And I'm not using a lot. So when you say the fat over lean, I'm still dealing with that. Number one, like I said, it's not thick paint. Okay, let's keep moving. I don't want to dwell in any one area all that long. Okay, let's get this rock in. We're gonna move around. Where are we at here? I was hoping I'd have it all laid in at about the 30-minute time, but I'm about 5 minutes away from 30 minutes and I'm not gonna quite get it all laid in. So hopefully 35, huh? Let's shoot for 35. I just want to have time to be able to go back into it later. And that's my thinking in terms of why I'm kind of looking at my time frame. When I'm using the concept of painting on location because I'm dealing with a time frame. And particularly when painting a large on location, it's a fun thing to do if you guys haven't done it. You have to have bigger brushes. You need a larger palette. You cannot work on a little paper. I guess you could, but generally I like to work on like an 18 by 24 palette when I'm doing larger paintings outdoors. And I've made myself several of the it's a plastic, it's a polymer palette. And I put that mount that on a piece of plywood pretty much, or hardboard. And it makes a wonderful palette. I've got a whole bunch of them. You tape it down and it works great. Where's that come down? Right about in here. We can't sit there and worry about whether I hit that exactly the right spot or not. I'm looking for movement. Actually, when I sketch this, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I was looking for movements. That's why you see, I saw lines going this way, and that's kind of what I was shooting for as I was drawing. Compositional movements. Okay, I don't like that. It's too bright. All right, it's too colorful. So I'll kill it a little bit, just come over it one time. Okay. Down below, again, white and Naples, pretty much using that, exclusively. A little bit of Gamsol.
What kind of polymer is Diana wants to know?
I get it at Tap Plastics. Here's one of these. I have about 6 of these. It's just it's an opaque piece of black, what would you call it? I get it at Tap Plastics. And there's usually Tap Plastics all over. So that's not a hard find, I find. You can find Tap Plastics all over the place. Let's get some light in on this rock. I've got just the right amount of terp in that paint right now because I don't even need medium. The terp is doing the trick for me. So I'm not changing the degree. I will lessen the light as we move back a little bit. Won't be quite as light, but since I lessened the darks, my contrast as we move forward is going to be stronger. Little lights back in here, just almost little abstract pieces. And I want the paint to mix because I don't want some of these marks to be anywhere near as light. Gonna hit that part of that rock with more blue, a little lighter. Whoop. Don't want to go quite that. Maybe that might work. It was a mistake, but what the heck? I think I'm gonna leave it for a little bit, see if I can make it work. I don't like it. So bring a little bit of the warm back into it. So maybe a little of that sliver of the blue might come through. Back to the white. And now we'll need a little light on this rock.
So Julie would like to know, she said, I see a lot of artists that paint the background first. Is there a reason or just a preference?
That's a hard question. It's my preference, first of all. I know a lot of artists that don't. I do because if I start on what I consider more of my focal point, I probably overdo it. And I find it that if I just indicate the background, I know I said this in the past, something a teacher of mine said, so I keep going back to, it's weird how you can keep going back to art school, huh? Because certain things that are said really come to fruition and really make sense later on. And it kind of did in the beginning. And the line was to set the stage and bring in your actors. And so by setting the stage, this is what I'm doing now. The actors obviously is my model. So that's my reason. But I'm going to tell you right now, I know artists that don't. And I've had discussions with artists. For example, I have a couple friends of mine that are fantastic, wonderful landscape painters that paint the sky last. I don't. I generally paint the sky first. And I guess what I'm trying to say is find what works for you. So when it is more of a preference, to answer your question, the way it was asked initially, it truly is more of a preference. I think it is. I just find it easier. And when I teach, I try and always, this doesn't have anything to do with me demonstrating now, but when I teach, I generally try and show people the easiest way, the way that I think is the easiest. And then if they in turn want to take it and change it, there are times when I will change things up a little bit, but generally speaking, I generally do paint the background first. But that doesn't mean I'm done with the background by any stretch of the imagination either. It just means it's in there like it is here. It's in there. So I have my color. It's easier, I find, if I relate the colors and values in my focal point, be it architecture, be it a figure, be it an animal. If I relate that to an environment that I've already created, rather than try and make the environment work for the focal point. This is just a little abstract that I've seen. I don't like this area right here, but for right now, it's going to stay. And I need a little bit of shadow information, and it's cool. It's cool meaning not neat. Cool meaning temperature. There is some there. Okay. It looks like I like the blue I put in there. I'll be darned. I didn't like it when I first put it in there. You know that? That's why you don't sit there and fuss over things that you don't think are working. You revisit it. I forget where I first heard that phrase, but I use that phrase a lot. You revisit an area. Does it need more? And that's when you're asking. Does it need more when you revisit an area? If it does, put it in. If it doesn't, start with some louder colors if you have to, and then as you're moving along, see if they work. Maybe they work. You know, maybe you took a chance and you learned something. So real quickly, we'll go here. Big, massive surface right there. I know, probably in your way.
Yeah.
I have to move all over the place. So if I get in your way,
Sorry.
I apologize in advance. I like that stroke. Kind of the sloppiness of that stroke has character. Lift up. A little finger painting helps. Probably did a little too much of it. I need to take this, lessen that. A little bit of light right here. Over on these rocks, kind of do a power stroke. Bold, bright, right there. Up on top of the rock, a little rock behind, another one comes in front. These aren't real bright. And a little bit of lighter, cooler skylight happening right about there. And there's a little bit of some blues. I'm just dragging it into that color. So the background is starting to shape up. All right. Is it exactly where I want it? No, but you know what? By the time I get a figure in, it just might work. I might not have to do a lot more. This is kind of stuff you learn if you paint from life or location. If you paint strictly from reference, you'll tend to want to make everything too much like your reference. And in doing so, you kind of lose some of the beauty of what painting is to me. And that's magnificent indication. Ooh. There's a new term for me. Magnificent indication. And that's, I guess what I mean by that is you put stuff in that works, but it's not exactly what you see. It's similar. So we've got a little bit, let's get a little of that water in. Back in here, it's in shadow. I'm going to save a little white flicks for the end, but let's paint that little shadow. It has a little bit of a blue-green character. And we'll try, it's not clean blue-green, but it's somewhere in here. Whoop. It's a little more green than I wanted. Let's try it again. Now, if I've played my cards right, I can really make her stand out. You know, notice I painted the whole darn thing. I do this very often when I paint quickly. I don't switch brushes a whole lot, particularly in the beginning. But I painted this whole thing with this rosemary number 12. Rubbing too much. When you hear that, it means when you hear me scrub like that, it actually means I'm working too hard. I added a little bit of the sienna as we come forward in this. Let's take it down. I don't want it to go right in the corner, so let's bring it up about in here. Any back in here? Yeah. Right here. Up here. So I was running out of color, so I took a little of the light blue and mixed some raw sienna into it. get a nice underpainting of some of those colors going, comes down in by this rock. Looks like that. Okay. Let's, we can get into my figure now. So if I set these values up correctly, I should be able to paint that figure with some power. So I'm going to go to my near black, which is the blue and the umber, ultramarine and umber. And I'm going to mix just a touch of white to it. Just because, as I've said many times, I don't like to go to my absolute dark or my absolute light too early. I want to be really close. So let's see what this looks like. Use a number 6 here. Some light back there. Comes down here. Okay. So I'm going to just stepping back, it looks like it's working pretty well. All right. I'm getting the punch, that value punch, because I lightened up some of the areas behind. Comes from there, and that thins her neck out, where I had some of the drawing off. I'm going to cheat her chin up a little bit. Just kind of indicate where these go. Okay. So now we're going to lay the flesh value in. I'm going to start with a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit of blue, a little bit of alizarin, a little bit more of the blue. I think I might be okay here, but I might be, let's see. Not bad. I want a little more warmth in it. So just a hair, a flicker of the cad orange hue. And we're going to go right here. Now remember, when you paint this stuff, you're reacting a little bit to the color of the canvas. The color of the canvas here is not white. That feels like actually a pretty darn good color. I'm going to take that color and deepen it just a little bit with a little umber, a little of the hair color. And we're going to try and indicate that dark right in there. I don't like, it's a little colder than I wanted. So, okay, same thing. Now, she's getting a lot of bounce light from below. Boom. So that makes the underside of her nose white. A little bit of a dark cheek. And I'm going to take umber and a little bit of the hair color now and mix it with a little warm. And we're going to do her jawline. Okay. So I'm going to mix up a slightly lighter version of the flesh tone. Sienna, a little blue, a little warm. I want this value to be very close because there's no bright light. She has a little bit more cool on her forehead. Let's see what this looks like. It might be a little light. No, it isn't. So there's my light to shadow. Value very, very close. A little cooler on the forehead. We'll get that in a second. Being careful. A little bit. Now, the muzzle, the upper lip muzzle, faces back, and therefore it's just a touch darker than the underside of the nose. So I'm using this number 6. I'm just using the corner of the brush to do my painting with. Go back on this cheek. Back to a little bit of the shadow. We want very close values there. And I normally wouldn't do it, but I'm going to do the lips right now. And they're warmer and darker. So let's try. That's a ugly bad stroke. But put it in there like you know what you're doing. I didn't have them dark enough. There, that feels pretty good. Okay. Chop this up a little bit. We're going to keep chopping with these chisel strokes.
Can you scoot over?
Okay, we're going to leave that alone for now. I don't want to go too far with it. I'm going to go into her outfit, which is colder. Similar value, much as more of a green cast. So I'm going to mix up a color that has a little bit more green in it and slightly lighter. That's probably a little too light. Let's try it. And pretty much the umber and the blue. I mean the raw sienna and the blue. That feels a little better. I want to spend a lot of time mixing. So let's get her in there.
There it is. I have to figure out.
That feels about right. Simplify all the shadows, make them all the same right now. There are differences, absolute differences in warms and cools, and even values. But right now, we want to simplify them. It's almost like you're doing a simplified poster right now. Also, I do want to do one thing while I'm thinking about it, and that is to get the face to stand out a little more. I want to punch these background colors. Okay. We're looking at value relationships. A little bit of color relationships, but value is much more important. It's a little cooler and darker right about there. I don't know if I can get both at the same time, but if I can. And a little bit lighter and warmer. Just using colors that I have already right here, already mixed up. Some of the siennas. Getting a little bit of the color movement going around. Goes a little darker. So I'm just adding, when I go a little darker, if I need to go darker, warmer, I add ember. If I need to go darker, cooler, I add ember and blue. Not enough. It's actually, it could be a little warmer, actually. And so what you start to do at this point is we're getting a little bit more going on in the outfit. And I'm probably just going to do a real indication of the outfit. And this time I took and added a little, a little sienna and Let's add a little bit more raw sienna into that. There we go. And we'll go from right there, there, and darken it a little bit with a little umber and a little blue. And get some of these pulls there, there, there. Pulling down. This is you got to indicate enough information in the clothing to make it work, which is, as I just stood back for a second, it looks like I'm getting enough value contrast in it to get it to work. A little more raw sienna, a little warmer. Right about in there. And bring a little ochre into it, a little maple, so it has a little bit more life. So it's getting some reflected light, some really nice, and we get the same kind of reflected light right about here, right down from the hand, right there. And a little darker there, all the way out to the edge. This kind of goes down, dissipates. It gets cooler, so we got to get the color variations right about here. Cooler, a little bit lighter. It's a little too blue, but I don't have time to sit and fuss on it too much, so I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Go back. This outfit is a little bit more complex than I thought when I decided I was going to do this. It's all fringe here, as is this.
So you're just painting that as a mass.
Yeah, I'm breaking it up, but not until I have the overall mass in there. I would like to be able to go back into the face. Hopefully I'm going to have some time. And I would do that pretty much with a liner, with a nice small little brush, so I can do a little bit. But right now we've got to get enough of her laid in so that I can do that. If I don't have enough of her laid in, it's not going to work. Okay. Dark. I'm using a lot of ochre. Sienna, blue, and brown. And we're going to hit a little. She's got a bracelet right about in there, and another one right about there. Not real dark, but maybe a little darker than I indicated. And a little bit of a kind of a rust, for lack of a better word, belt, but it's pretty dark. As it goes into shadow, it goes extremely dark. Very dark right at this point. And then it begins to lighten up, have a little bit maybe more of a color as it comes over here. Take that same kind of a color, add a little blue to it, because it'll darken it and cool it off. We can add a little bit of the indication. And then her leggings, very dark and slightly warm, almost as dark as her hair. I was actually hoping to lengthen her a little bit, but I'm kind of out of time for doing a lot of changes. So a little bit of shadow on the front of her booty part of her legging, which is right about here. And the same with that toe. Let's get the hands in. Got to get those in her before I add any illumination to her. And I can actually bring some darks I can see right now up here, back. Okay. Someone laughing?
Ted Sanchez wants to know what dye you're using on your hair.
What dye I'm using on my hair. Okay, Ted. I am using cadmium yellow light hue.
It's all natural.
Yeah, it's natural, but you know, the camera does, there's a lot of gray in there, you guys. It's just that it's kind of the same value as the blonde. So it doesn't show up a lot. That's probably the best stroke I made for her outfit right there, that last one. Let's get her hands in and go back to kind of that base flesh color I was using, which is somewhere in here. Darker. Definitely darker. Let's try that. That might be better. Made it a little bit on the red side, but it's a little on the red side, a little more red than I wanted. I threw a little burnt sienna into it, which just came out a little too. Value is fine. It's a little bit strong on the hue. Now, I might at the end realize that, hey, it works pretty good, you know? So I'm just kind of, if I get the value right at this stage, I feel pretty good about it. So we're going to kind of go a little darker up in here, and I got to start hitting some lights on her. And I'm going to probably stay with the same brush. I think I have a smaller one that I just picked up. No, I don't. Stay with this. Okay, back of her hair. Let's add a little bit of blue because you want that pitch black look. So I add a little bit of blue and white, and we're going to start with that. And then we won't finish with it, but we're going to start with it. And then we're going to use a lot of what I used in the rocks. White. So I cleaned my brush pretty good. White and Naples yellow. And I threw a little bit of a solvent-free gel into it. And we'll get a little bit of light at the top of her head, but not as much. And it sneaks a little bit of light in here. Not a lot. We want to bring that in, fuzz it a little bit. Okay. So her forehead's is a lot cooler. So I'm going to try and see what I can do with this. Oh, I don't mind that at all. That might look a little strong to everybody, but I kind of like it. So we're going to get the light on her outfit now. On her shoulder. A little light on her flesh tone that sneaks back behind her braid. And this is all about setting up, everybody. If I set everything up properly, if I painted this light enough, enough strength in here, then I should be able to get her to really stand out. And if I haven't laid, I've made the background a little too harsh, dark, she's not going to work. So again, white and on this shoulder too, a little bit. So a little bit hits right there, comes over her shoulder, down to on her shoulder, back on her arm. I'm going to throw a little bit of more sienna into it just because I want a little bit warmer right here. Boy, I like that warm. I like that warm. Let's get the blouse out. See where else we got. I can lighten up quite a bit. Okay. Let's finish off on her. Oh, good. Got almost a half an hour. Whew. Good. It gives me a chance because I need to go back into her, put about 5 minutes into her face if I can. A little bit of that warm, whoop, too much white. Go back to white maples, a little bit of the solvent-free gel. But I see some nice little warm flecks that I can pull right in there, down in there. But it's got to be really loose enough so it sits on top. This is a little, needs some work here, right in here. Let me go back to one of my bigger brushes. And let's see what I can do here. That feels better. Every now and then, I haven't stood back as anywhere near. If I were doing a finished painting, I'd be back from this every 5 minutes. But in a quicker demo with this much going on, I need the time to actually paint stuff. There's a little light, and what is happening there? That's that kind of where light comes kind of from behind, and you get a little glow right back in there. So let's get that little glow there. Here. I like her. I like what I did with the forehead. But her face is really drab, and it's more of the focal point than anything else. So we're going to put some light on her shoes here. add a few more darks into her outfit. Like here. I got to put those braids in too. I haven't got those. Okay.
Julie would like to know if you go back on these paintings after the live streams or.
Well, you know, you can answer that.
Yeah, I know.
Basically what I do is we usually take a break and then I come back in later in the afternoon. I usually my guess would be anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes back into them. I never carry them further than that, simply because I want the integrity of the almost the plein air aspect, for lack of a better word, but the alla prima, it's all been done at once. I never try, if I want to do a finished painting of one of these, then I'm going to start from scratch and do everything that I've done much slower with a little bit more care. And sometimes I end up painting the life out of it. Sometimes it works better, but generally speaking, I don't go back and put a lot of time because I like the integrity of the plein air. And it's the same. I've been asked that question many times about when I paint on location. Do you go back and work on them? The answer is basically no. I do a little bit, but I don't try and turn it into a studio painting. You know, I use the word finished painting, and that's probably a bad term because a finished painting can be a 10-minute painting. It doesn't have to be this, you know, something you labored over for years. A finished painting is a painting that is effective when it's done. So I generally don't. If I have the opportunity to look at it at a later time, and I see some things that bother me or one or two things that I think need a little bit of refinement, but generally speaking, I don't do a lot. I don't know if that helps you, but let me go a little further with that. I will do 30-hour paintings, 40-hour paintings. I will do that. So I don't want to make it sound like, you know, these are challenges, and I learn as much as maybe, and if you guys think you learned something from it, great, because I learn. I learn things that I can get by with, that I can do, and probably not have to be as overly concerned as I normally would be. Okay, let's get it. I want to get into her face for a little bit, so let me go do that before we go much further. I'm gonna see what it's not a very good liner. Let's see. It's not bad. I have a bunch of these little liners. I buy them. They're cheap little watercolor brushes, but they're great for finishing. They're great for if you want to do any sort of refining. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure my finger is kind of clean. I'm gonna look really carefully at that, and I'm gonna get her eyebrow as I see it, right about here. Her eye. That's the lash line. And the other eyebrow, as I see it, and the back side of the eye, which is the darkest. I don't want this face to be rendered. I mean, that would really be a stupid thing to do in a quick painting. Her eyes are working better. Get a little bit more punch on the cheekbone. Clean my finger again. Throw a little bit more cool into it. It's a little bit real close values here, everybody. Really close. Underside of the nose. I mentioned that before. The plane. That plane right there. Upper lip. Now, real subtly, this comes from basically painting figures a lot, knowing that the light is bouncing and she's probably catching light under here and on her chin. So we can help the piece by fixing that. Now, the other thing that I want to do is I want to let her hair on this side stand out by dealing with the background. So what I've done is I've pronounced her hair. I'm going to take her cheekbone, I'm going to warm it up with, take the dark color I was using, and I mixed in a little bit of the cat orange. Now, I think I might be too dark here. No, maybe I'm not. Now the face is working okay. Now I'm going to go back to the lips. A little darker so they stand out. And the upper lip, because it's facing downward, will catch a little bit more light than the lower lip. That's the lower lip. And the upper lip is lighter and warmer. Not a lot, but a little bit. And then we're going to soften this. Okay, I don't want to go much further on the face right now. If I had time, yes. I want to keep moving throughout the painting. So we're talking maybe 20, 25 minutes at the most that I've got. So let's start to get the rest of it working if we can. Now we've got a little bit of some of that water. You can see it through the, interesting. And a little bit of, now we're going to do some sparkles on the water. I'm going to try and use a knife for that because I think I can do it quicker and more effective with a knife than I can if I'm using a brush. And we're going to use pretty much white and Naples yellow together. So I'm kind of a warm white, a little bit lighter than some of the other whites. And I'm not mixing any medium with it at first. So we're going to kind of come in with some highlights there, a little highlight back here. So I see it here. I want to get some stuff going up in here too. So back in here, we'll get a lot of light. This is on the rock itself. All right. Water behind it. Ran out already of the white and the Naples, so I mixed up more. Just taking a little bit more, mixing more of it on my palette. And just a touch of the solvent-free gel, so I don't have to scrape quite as hard. Now, that it makes the paint softer, so you can lay it down easier, like that. You can lay it right there. There, a lot of little, this is why I figured a knife might be quicker to do some of this stuff with. And there is a little bit of movement. Kind of neutral, but back in the water itself back here, so it isn't just a flat color. And I'm using blue, white, and a little ochre to kind of create a little bit of a lighter feel right back in here. And I see a little bit of it in here. I can see it. You can use your knife and then come back over it too. So I'm going to lighten this up just a little bit right there. Get her outfit to stand out more. And reflections of the rock coming down, and it tends to be on a little bit on the warm side. And right there.
Kind of blocking.
There. Put some darks back into it. Kind of neutrals. Similar colors that I have in the rock, not quite as harsh. By harsh, I mean dark. Now, interesting, it's a shadow in that rock. I see it. I didn't see it before. So what do? Leave the color that's there as the shadow. So that color, not quite, that color becomes the shadow. A little on the blue side, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers right now. You better keep moving. So if I'm wrong on colors, I'm wrong, and we'll live with it. So we're going to take more of this white, a little bit more of the solvent-free gel, and we're going to put some just by gingerly laying your knife down, you can get the feeling of a lot of that. I just stood back. It tends to be coming okay. There's a lot of light right here. I'm just kind of, okay. It's about what I can get done in this amount of time. Didn't hit this one area that I'm sorry about. And not just there, but right here too. And this is going to do a lot of overlapping. Some more of this little white water going. A little bit there. Comes up over this rock a little bit. So this is the kind of stuff I might go back and touch up. So when someone is asking me about, do I work on it later? This is the kind of stuff that I might say, you know, I need a little bit more, a little bit less. Maybe I did too much. And so I might go back into areas like this and do a little bit of work. Let's get a little bit of these rocks up front. There's a rock here that she's standing on. I'm quiet, huh? It's because I'm playing against time. And so I'm spending a lot of time just getting paint down where I think it needs to go to make this thing feel relatively complete by when we're done. Now I do see some interesting little waves of water that occur right here. And there's a rock that interrupts right here. Another little one right there. These are just little strokes at this point. That's about all you're getting in. It's just a little. Same in here. Get into rocks. So that I don't ignore it. Let's take, where's my filbert? Let's take, I don't have a filbert. I'm going to take a thicker liner. And we're going to put a few just a little bit here and there. Got to get enough in so it feels. I don't like that brush. I'm not getting a good stroke with it is why. Oh, let's see what I can find. I'm going to go to smaller liner. That's all I can do. Let's get some dark ones in there. Here we go. I'm going to pull some darks right from here. Pull it up. It's a better liner. The other one was just a little too thick, and I was getting kind of, the strokes were a little more clumsy. These strokes tend to feel a little bit more what I'm looking for. Keep an eye on my time. That's where I might use a knife too and come in with some. That's starting to help a little bit. Now I take the same kind of a color, darker and warmer. We're going to put a few in here too. I'm going to bring one all the way down. Right there. One a little thicker. And another one right next to it. Is a little more brown than I wanted. So I'm mixing a little blue, get a little pull right here. I got to put some light on those too. Too blue, but I'm gonna live with it. Okay, let's put a little light on those. Let's give it a shot here. Hit and miss. One. And let's hit this one. Two. little pieces that kind of come across. That's way too thick, but we just thin it out later. So today, I get my second vaccine at 3:45. So if any touch-ups I do, I'm going to do before then.
That was earlier.
Isn't that fun? They had to postpone my second one because it was originally supposed to get it last Monday, but I get it today. So kind of looking forward to it. Actually, I'm really looking forward to it. A lot of people are real apprehensive about the vaccines. I'm absolutely not. I look forward to it a lot. So, you add a little bit of activity that I see coming back into the distance. There are little lights on rocks, so we just we don't worry about the darks, just hit the lights, and then kind of scuff it down into here. Smear a bunch together. They're back in the background, so you don't want to call attention to them, you know. You just want the feeling of light hitting busyness back in there. Back in here. I'm going to darken a little bit down behind her, right there, just to clarify her face a little bit more. And I'm going to go into the cheekbone. I'm close to my time, and I'm getting kind of what I want. I'd love to have another 2 hours on it, really nail the darn thing, but the effect is coming off, it looks like. The refinement isn't, but you don't refine these things anyway. So let's fix a little bit of this up in here. I'm just trying to get enough going on everywhere so the piece feels complete. Whether it's done as far as I would like it to be done isn't the point. The point is, and I'm trying to relate this to a plein air, if you're painting on location, you got a model. Number one, your model's not going to sit there. They're going to take some breaks. So it's not going to be quite the same. One thing I did, and I mentioned that at the end, I wanted to hit the edge of these rocks really bright. So this is almost the same color as using in the water. So I'm using that same kind of color, a little bit maybe here too, because the top light. Now I could be doing that with a brush just as easily, but I've got a knife in my hand. That's the only reason I'm using a knife, is that's what I've got in my hand. Brush. We're just about up, so I probably go about 5 more minutes, and wherever we're at, I'm going to call it complete. Doesn't mean it's going to be complete. It's just that I'm going to call it complete. So it's really thick paint, but it's laid on with a lot of medium. Medium meaning the solvent-free gel at this particular time. Let's go back to the knife. Behind this rock. A little bit of a lighter edge. Some of these. Well, I didn't want that much. A little bit of light peeking back up. Pick up that white again. That rock probably stands out more than the other rocks. This one would be the second one. And I see it right at about this point where it goes behind the rock down below, gets lighter. So I kind of sneak in some. And that's how you build variations in the rock. You go back, you revisit. Last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to darken her hair. If you guys recall, I said I wasn't going to go all the way. So now I'm taking the blue, the umber, and I'm going to go darker. Because I want to really pull attention up towards her face. I'm going to go bring a little bit of light, cooler light on the shoulder. It feels a little flat in here, like I need a little bit more gradation from here on down. Her face is working okay. I'm kind of shocked. It's not great, but it's better than I thought it was going to be when I first started it, because I saw a lot of problems there. I think we're close to done, aren't we?
Yes. A little over.
Huh?
A little over.
Little over. I always go a little over. I always, one of these days I'm going to pick one that I can actually get done really well in the amount of time but really the whole idea of doing these is to give you guys an idea of an approach, not that everything is going to be finished to the nth degree, but hopefully what you get is the idea of how to approach this kind of stuff. It's always a little bit of a challenge. I've never tried one like this scale, this involved. I've done a few. Landscapes are easier to fake. So I can get in there and do a lot more fussing around and getting the landscape to work. The minute you throw a figure into it, you got a little bit more of a problem. Because you got anatomy you got to worry about, you got proportion, clothing and the effect, whether you get the appropriate kind of look on the clothing. So you got all those other fun elements to deal with. I mean, I personally love doing figures. So for me, it's fun, and it's at the same time, I like to see what I can do. And so you're all affording me the opportunity, thank you, of seeing what I can do. I mean, I know I can make it look okay. I have enough confidence, but in order to really get it to look like it might be close to a finished painting, it's a different story. That takes a little bit more editing. So it's a word I haven't used much. And when you're doing these quick ones, when you're doing plein air, it's all editing. It's not strictly painting and continue painting and continue painting. It's deciding what's important. What can I leave out? What do I really need to put in to make this piece work? So here's a little right at the end. This little thing, this little trick at the end, you can get all kinds of really neat effects with it without just letting your knife kind of go down and scratch a little. I am going to let y'all go. So I'm going to have some lunch so that I don't have to have my vaccine on an empty stomach. I don't know if that matters, truthfully. Had no reaction to the first one. I'll let you guys know next week if I had any reaction to the second one. Hopefully not. This is a little bothersome just because it interferes a little too much with her face. So what I might do is take a little bit of that background and just push it back just a little bit. That feels better. So it sits back there. Hands aren't very good. So I'm going to tell you what's good and what's bad. Hands are terrible. Just didn't have the time to. The indication on that hand is actually not terrible. The indication on that hand is not good. And so I might go back to answer that question someone asked earlier. I might go back into it and do a little bit of work on the hand. But there basically we have it for a quick painting of a rainbow on the rocks.
Sounds like a new drink.
Yeah, that's a drink.
I'll have a rainbow on the rocks.
And I hope you all have a good weekend and a good healthy weekend, and look forward to doing something different next week. Always looking to try and do something a little that I haven't done, as I have here. This is something I haven't done. So particularly working from these old photos that I find. It's kind of fun. Rediscovering a lot of the old stuff that I shot when I used to take models on location. Haven't done that for a while. I really do miss that. I would really like to take some models and go on location and do some really fun stuff, because it's a kick. It really is. Okay, everybody. Last stroke. See, that made it, didn't it? Huh? Okay. I have to move in. Happy painting. Bye-bye.